What is up, fight fans? I am Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and I have the great pleasure of being joined by a 23-year veteran of the MMA game. He's a former UFC heavyweight champion as well as a former star of Pride and Affliction. However, he's also had a distinguished career in professional wrestling, competing and commentating for promotions like New Japan Pro Wrestling, IGF. Now, while on hiatus from Bellator, he's helping bring back some old school fare as the ringleader of Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, with the third event under the Game Changer Wrestling banner going down on October 11th on Fight TV. That man I speak of has gone by many names, including the baby-faced assassin and the War Master, and that man is the one and only Josh Barnett, Mr. War Master, sir. Thanks so much for the time to talk Bloodsport and so much more.
You're welcome.
Now, so talk to me about how you got involved with GCW and this new Bloodsport ShootWrestling format they are producing, because they first did it with Matt Riddle in 2018. Matt has now become a star for WWE. Who contacted who to make, for you to take up the reins of this concept in 2019 and make it kind of your own thing?
They contacted me for Matt Riddle's Bloodsport to compete in it, but there wasn't a possibility for me to work that show. There was conflicts at the time. Then, prior to Riddle leaving to the WWE, obviously they knew that they were not going to be able to run Matt Riddle's Bloodsport anymore because they wouldn't be having any access to Matt. Brett reached out to me again, but in this case to see if I'd be interested in taking over the product, and I just said, well, yes. However, if it's going to be Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, I need to be producing it, booking it, agent, all that. I need to be a part of the entire production, the whole thing from start to finish. And I have a different, even though it may share some same frameworks, I have a very different way of approaching this, and I intend to make this my own, starting with the Josh Barnett Bloodsports as numbering from 1 on up, and not seeing this as a continuation, but a different product.
I think some longtime wrestling and MMA fans have an idea of what shoot wrestling is, but it is more of an old school terminology. So many of the casuals or recent fans probably don't know a lot about it. I'm a longtime fan of wrestling, MMA, and love the movie Bloodsport. So the whole concept makes a lot of sense for me and interests me. But so let's say a 17-year-old kid comes up to you, has heard about Bloodsport, but wasn't sure if it's something for them. How would you explain the format of the show and just kind of help them further understand shoot wrestling in general and say, to explain this is something they got to check out?
I don't even get into any of the technical elements of it. I just simply state that this is stripped down, pure wrestling product. This is two people going in the ring and fighting for all that they have. And that's that. If you want to watch people really go at it, if you want to watch people, present that conflict in the ring, if you want to see something that isn't powered by gimmicks and catchphrases, over the top production, everything. It's like it's a difference between drinking. It's a difference between drinking alcohol at room temperature and drinking it where it's either overly warm or overly cold. The only reason you generally serve alcohol overly cold or overly warm is to hide the fact that the product itself isn't actually that good. Okay. It's got a lot of off flavors. It's got a lot of, like esters that make it taste like alcohol. And so a really great scotch is you're going to consume it at room temperature because you don't want to hide anything. Everything within it is exactly as it should be. If you're drinking cheap vodka, cheap sake, cheap whatever, you put it on ice, you chill it in the refrigerator, in the freezer, because you need to hide all of those imperfections. Well, we don't have imperfections to hide. In fact, if anything, we're a Scotch, we're a bourbon neat type of event in the realm of professional wrestling.
It was recently announced that AEW World Champion and current NJPW United States Champion Jon Moxley will be headlining this card. How huge is it to get someone of his stature on this show, especially when he's as popular as he's ever been and so closely tied to a brand that many fans look at as like the it brand of professional wrestling right now in AEW? How big of a difference to have him is it?
It's awesome. It's awesome to have him for all the reasons that you've stated. But for me, the most awesome thing is just to have him, the individual, the athlete, the wrestler on the show, to showcase who he is and to give him the kind of platform that we offer that nobody else does. So that's the draw for me. I really believe that by having people in my show, I can show something that isn't something that you can find anywhere else, and you're not going to find it anywhere else, even out of them, because there are no other shows like us out there.
Is there, like, because you mentioned earlier how much control, and it's kind of your vision and stuff like that, and I mentioned earlier you have a serious background in professional wrestling, been all over the world and stuff like that, doing that kind of thing. Where would you say, like, your biggest influences in knowing booking style and production and putting on a wrestling event? Where's that come from? Just basic experience of just watching it for years, asking questions, knowing thing, or are there people you go to for advice for something like this because this is your vision?
I mean, a lot of it is derived from experience, of course. I think it would be impossible to say otherwise. I mean, we're always going to draw from our experience and what we've seen and what we've encountered out there. But I think the majority of my vision comes from the shooting aspect of professional wrestling, which now we know as MMA, but used to be really its own entity, when professional wrestling was a legitimate sport that was shoot all the time. The other side of it would be from my mentors, would be from Carl Gotch, Billy Robinson, and Antonio Inoki, the people that really raised me in professional wrestling, taught me my approach towards it, how I view it, not just the technical elements, but the overall philosophy towards creating not just a professional wrestling match, but what a professional wrestling event and what professional wrestling as an overall concept should be. And so from them, I draw a lot of inspiration, and also stuff like the booking of Yuko Miyato from the UWFI, who's also a very, very dear friend of mine, and harkening back to the old 70s, early 80s New Japan, the UWF and all of its offshoots, of course, and just the idea of the older wrestling products, going back to the territories and everything, where keeping things under wraps, never allowing anything to be too systematized, where you just know how every match is going to go and how it's going to no. So from every territory to territory to territory, everything was always new to people. And so I'm trying to keep everything about what we do in the ring to be a new experience, not the same experience over and over and over again, not just a bunch of 30-minute matches for no damn reason. Every experience is on its own. It's an individual thing.
Speaking of territories, because Jon Moxley's kind of living that classic territory story, going from New Japan to AEW, now to Bloodsport, stuff like that. What's the chance that you return the favor to Jon and AEW and you pop up on an episode of AEW Dynamite? Because I'm sure you popping up on Dynamite would be huge for the Bloodsport brand and getting it out there and broadening horizon. Is there any possibility of something like that happening?
Well, I mean, any place that I could have an audience to draw from, to go out there and perform, go out there and fight is great. But I don't foresee any entry into AEW whatsoever. I don't think the people that the office, I would say, of AEW have any use for the type of guy that I am, let alone even would know what to do with me. So I mean, hey, whatever Mox is up to, and I've got a lot of good friends that are wrestling in AEW, just like I have a bunch of students in WWE and friends and things there, and people that are friends in New Japan. I know people all over the world in this sport, but if however somebody has designed what their promotion is going to be, then that's all up to them. I'm not here to go and beat on doors and bang pots and pans and make a big racket about hey, put me in, coach. I don't need to say I don't need to say anything about using me. It's like either you're interested or you're not, and I'm not knocking on anyone's doors.
Let's say talents were not legally blocked by contracts and they can have more free movement like like Mox is doing with AEW, what would you say would be like the top 5 talents if you could pull from the UFC or WWE that you feel would be perfect for this kind of format, shoot wrestling? Who would it be if you weren't blocked and you could pull from anybody? Who would your top 5 be?
I don't know that I would pull anyone from the UFC per se, because I don't even know that they will want to be a part of professional wrestling. It's I always say that they're the same coin, but they're one side. So one's heads, one's tails.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And so you could probably spot plenty of times where MMA fighters have gone into professional wrestling and it has not worked at all.
Yeah.
And obviously we've seen the reversal of that too. But if I had, I don't know, well, I mean, 5 people I could think of right off the top of my head would be that, let's say that I don't have access to at the moment, would be Bobby Lashley, Shayna Baszler. I go back to Tim Thatcher, even though I used to have access to him. Now I don't. Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke. And then maybe what would be one that could be interesting to
What
people?
about Shinsuke Nakamura?
Oh yeah, 100%. I would love that. But I also don't know that this would be something that Shinsuke would want to do at this point in his career. It's he's on a different path right now than I am, I would say. And I mean, hell, if he was up for it, 100%. I mean, he'd kill it. Or Kushida, be fantastic.
Samoa Joe probably be another one.
Samoa Joe would be great. I mean, there's actually a whole ton of talent out there to be used. And, I've had Andy Williams on my first show, and I was hoping to be able to get him for this one, but it just didn't work out. But, it's guys like that I know people will view them in one manner, but I know that they have the ability to go out there and fight and compete in this stripped down version. And succeed and be successful.
Your Bellator debut has been postponed twice, with the second time coming when the Mohegan Tribe Athletic Commission claimed you failed a medical test. Can you talk about that test, the failure, and how much it's impacting your return to the cage and just future in the sport?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's certainly impacting things as I had a fight. Well, I had a fight which in the end wasn't even going to happen anyways. Like it all got canceled.
Yeah.
And, as far as medicals are concerned, there is still a limit, or not a limit, there's still a aspect of discretion, and which can be entirely subjective. And so, we're straight up. We always deal with them 100% with complete transparency, and they just decided to one thing they agreed upon to then go back and take it away, or say that they don't like it, or they're not, whatever. And so that's just the way it is. But that's what happens when you deal with bureaucratic agencies as it is. It's just always the risk that you run. And it's frustrating sometimes to try to explain to people that these things are often can be very arbitrary in the way that they do things. It's just up to their own discretion. And so it isn't always so cut and dry. And sometimes that just is a pain in the ass. But if you don't want to deal with that, then I guess the one thing would be to try make your own thing. So if I wanted to create a professional wrestling product, well, I'm doing that with Bloodsport along with GCW and Brett. If I wanted to create my own fight event, okay. But, every state has their sanctioning bodies. There's always some sort of oversight. And I'm not the person to say that these things are all, I'm not taking the total ANCAP complete libertarian viewpoint in that, no regulations ever on anything whatsoever. But, everything comes with pluses and minuses.
And it seems like they're just kind of basing their American cards in Connecticut, in Mohegan for now. Because of
Seems
this,
that way.
It's still a thing in the process? So until further notice, will we not see you in 2020? Is that 2020-21 kind of the possibility at this point?
I have things in the works, but I mean, I've got a massively busy life. So if something gets put together, and we it's all scheduled out, it's all planned, and if all of a sudden there's a swerve, it's like, all right, if there's no immediate way to rectify it, like after Hawaii and getting sick as crap, man, and who knows, maybe that was COVID. I have no idea, man. It was not anything that was fun in the least. It was a pretty nasty turn of events, but if there's not some way to immediately reestablish or rebook the whole thing, right? Then it's like, I'm moving on. We'll figure something out down the way, but I don't have time to wait for anyone or anything. I've already got multiple events in production, not just Bloodsport either, potentially, and all these other personal and professional projects going on all the time. Not to mention the fighters that I train and manage and work with. Well, not that I've been super busy with that with COVID, sadly. But it's just that I'm at a point in my career where I either, if something gets set up, we'll put it together. I'll cut that time out, and all right, let's go and do it. If things get sidetracked or go sideways, it's like, okay, if we can't remedy this in a fashion that is on an immediate pathway, I'm out. I'm gone. I'm moving to the next thing.
And that's perfectly transition kind of where I was going, because let's say, you have a return date or something like that. But in general, what's the motivation, considering all the things you've said, how busy you are, 42, 43 fights in the sports, 23 years in the industry. Is it just purely competition that makes you go? Is it a run in Bellator mostly is about finally getting that Fedor fight that didn't happen in Pride or Affliction? Are there fights in Bellator aside from him that really interest you? Like, what makes the MMA juice still worth the squeeze for you at this point?
Because I can still do it, and the point of your athletic window, I think, is to use it as much as possible. And when you get to that point where it's not going to return what the effort that's put back into it, or let's say the motivation isn't there, or the body is failing, or it becomes more of a more tedium than passion. Then okay, now you've got to your end point. But if you know that you've done everything that you can do with it, then when you walk away, you're fine.
Yeah.
You know that everybody has a limited amount of time in which they get to do this kind of stuff. I know it's not something that people want to think about, nor is it maybe even all that helpful for most people to think of it that way all the time. Yeah. But it's to be able to do it 23 years is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Most people probably only get to do it up to about 5 or 7.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to use the most of it as much as I can and fight while I still have the want to do so.
Now for my 5 for Fighters segment. In this segment, I am going to give you like 5 names, phrases, or topics, and I want you to give me like the first thoughts that come to mind when you hear them. And you're welcome to expand on each as much as you want. Now, the first one is the difference between Japanese MMA and wrestling fans. What's the difference in your mind?
The difference between Japanese MMA fans and Japanese wrestling fans?
Yeah, pro wrestling fans.
Oh. Hardly any. To be honest, there's a lot of overlap, I think, between the two. Although I think the pro wrestling fans maybe run more into the otaku kind of category. But then again, in Japan, like, you can be an otaku of MMA. Mm. You can be an anime otaku, but not an otaku for sports. I mean, it's they're very deep in their nerd culture. And so I would say, like, yeah, maybe the Japanese wrestling fans run dorkier than the MMA fans, but there's a lot of crossover, and both of them have a tremendous amount of passion and are very loyal and supportive of the wrestlers and fighters.
Do you feel it's the same way in the U.S.? Since both audiences are from a fairly niche kind of sport industry, is it the same, or is one audience in the U.S. more jerks?
I'm not gonna get into any sort of like who's worse or who's an asshole or whatever, but no, there is overlap in MMA and
Yeah.
pro wrestling here in the States, but they're completely different animals in the way that they operate and act. The fan bases are not. Well, I mean, it's just a cultural thing. I think that that's what it comes down to. And American fans can be as passionate or more passionate than anyone else out there in the world. But sometimes that passion can also be like the candle that burns twice as bright, burns only lasts half as long.
Yeah.
So
Now, next one is, since you've been around this industry for so much, have seen so much, Colby Covington.
good fighter.
All right, fair enough. Now, the next one is Bloodsport. Be it your Bloodsport, be it the movie Bloodsport. What are the first thoughts when you hear that word?
Hardest hitting event in all of professional wrestling.
Next one is, you had a history with them and recently, and it was vindicated recently, USADA.
The bureaucracy manifest.
All right, and last one, best pro wrestler in the world today. If you don't want to pick just one, give me three. Who do you think
No,
the three
here's the
best
thing.
are?
You know, whoever is considered the best pro wrestler in the world today, let's get a consensus so that I can go out there and beat the shit out of them.